I've just driven the Z up on a set of ramps in my garage. And the reason being is I'm starting stage 2 upgrades on this car. It's going to comprise of 3 separate modifications. The first modification that we're going to tackle today is on the cylinder head. I tracked this car on the 4th of July, Independence Day at Laguna Seca, where it was sweltering hot, 94 degrees ambient and probably well over 100 out on that hot track. The engine did very well, the car performed great. However, I noticed on my way home that my temperature gauge began fluctuating. Not overheating, but it would wander between about a quarter and then up to half. I found it a bit strange, so of course when I got home, I checked my radiator and, well, it was only half full. I was losing quite a bit of coolant, or had lost quite a bit of coolant. My reservoir was also empty as well. This car does not have a warning system, so there's no light on the dash when the coolant level gets low. So I've done some investigating, and I found that the head gasket is leaking, but not in a way where you would expect. You won't be able to really see anything right now as I've only ran the car for 5 minutes, but I noticed that right where the head and block meet, especially on the last 3 cylinders, there was an accumulation of water, green water, indicating coolant. Of course, you don't want to assume anything, especially given that the heater lines are right in this area, and those do tend to leak every now and then. However, what I did to prove this theory was I removed the overflow line from the overflow reservoir, and I pumped about 15 psi of air into the cooling system with my air compressor. And I let it sit for about 5 minutes, and when I came back, there was a very steady trickle coming out of the cylinder head around the 4 to 6 area, sort of in the middle where the cylinder head temperature sensor is, and trickling down onto the block and onto my floor. So what has happened? I did a compression test, and amazingly, compression is utterly fantastic on this engine. We're talking 184 to 190 psi across all 6. So the combustion chamber has been compromised. How could this be happening? Well, this engine is 43 years old. It's never been opened up. It has its original head gasket and original head bolts. My theory is, after so much full throttle on the track, after so much age and 154 or so thousand miles, that the head studs or the head bolts have weakened and have begun to stretch, signifying this leak here. Now, in most cases with these L-Series engine, it is just oil that seeps out of the head, which mine is quite a bit. But it's gotten to the point where I believe the head bolts have stretched so much that it's now allowing coolant to slip past as well. So here is my plan. There's no getting around it. To fix this problem, the engine must be torn down. So what am I going to do? I'm going to tear down the engine, and I'm going to replace the head gasket and the head bolts. But while I'm at it, I'm actually going to get the cylinder head shaved. Now that's going to boost compression. So basically what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be tearing down the top half of this engine. Head's going to be off. I'm going to send it to the machine shop, get it shaved down. We're going to reinstall it, make sure everything runs right, and then phase 2 of that upgrade will be installing a custom ground camshaft, but we'll get to that in a later video. But for now, let's get into the teardown. Well, I will say one thing. No matter how many of these fuel-injected 2.8s I've worked on, getting the manifolds off is always a bitch. Especially this bolt here and this bolt here. Those are the worst. These other ones are okay, but I mean, these two, total pain in the ass. You know, and on further inspection, this head gasket was leaking a lot worse than I thought. I mean, there's coolant coming down between 3 and 4. We have accumulation here on number 2. Then a bunch of buildup on number 1. Pretty much the entire length of the head is leaking on the exhaust side. I probably never noticed because the hot exhaust was burning off the coolant. But yeah, this job definitely has been needed to be done for quite some time, and very badly. So now what I'm going to do to save me some time in the long run is I'm going to set cylinder 1 compression stroke top dead center. That's just going to help the reassembly, lining everything back up. So we need to make sure the cam sprocket, the crank, and the distributor are in the proper position. Alright, so as you can see here, here's number 1, there's the rotor position, and we've got the 2 cylinder 1 lobes opposed. You can see in the cam sprocket that we're on timing position 1. I don't know if you can tell, if you can see the marks in there, but we are in time. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the timing tensioner tool in. You can't just throw the chain off and all that sort of stuff. You need to put a tool in, which Z-Car Depot sells. It keeps the timing chain tensioner from collapsing and then falling apart. There's nothing to retain the spring in there. So if you just take the chain off, tensioner is going to just shoot out. No more tension, and then you got to crawl around in the bottom of the block and pick up all those pieces and then try to put it back together without taking the engine out of the car. So very important you get that tool. Alright, so here are all of the nasty, stinky head bolts. And as you can see, I don't know why, but they're these, I don't know what's up with all this stuff, but these do not look good. All kinds of carbon on them for some reason. And then a couple of them looked like they were bent or warped. So, very strange. I don't know, but one other thing is that the rear head bolts seem to be a lot looser than the front. The front I really had to put some muscle in. The rear came out with ease, so I'm guessing it's because the rear are stretched, but well, let's continue on. So one thing I've done here to make retiming a little easier is, I'm not sure if you can tell on camera, but on each cam sprocket reference mark, if this thing will focus, I made 2 center punches on each link where there's a timing reference mark. So on timing position 2 I've made 2 punches, and on timing position 1 I've made 2 little punch marks there. That link is also a different color, and that's going to help me line everything back up because I got to take the sprocket off. We should have liftoff. Alright. Well, I can definitely notice straight away that this head gasket was suffering. And we can see here on the surfaces, if this stupid camera will focus, there we go, that there is definitely some water damage, a bit of corrosion and calcification on 1 and 2 here. Then we can just see that the gasket is just entirely deteriorating here back by 5 and 6. So I'm going to go ahead and say this was definitely the original head gasket. You can even see on you can just see it that there really was not much life left in this gasket. Getting this cleaned up is definitely going to be a bit of a challenge, that's for sure. As I've got a wire wheel on a drill, but as far as the head goes, that'll all be taken care of. But one thing I'm really happy about is that the bores are just absolutely perfect. I mean, there is just, it's like this thing just came out of the machine shop. I mean, there's literally no scratches. You can see the cross hatching, and that's a machining mark from when this block was turned into an engine block from a cast piece of metal. But I mean, the bores are just, couldn't be any more perfect. Not one scratch or score or anything like that. But on a separate note, the head also looks pretty damn good. Again, no carbon buildup, valves are clean. Honestly, internally, this engine's in just really damn good shape. So that's all great news. Well, now the top of the head is totally stripped. Everything down to the valves and valve springs, which is how it will remain for its resurfacing. Of course, you have to take all these parts out to make sure all the valves close at once for the machining process. I'm also going to have the machinist check all the valves, make sure they're all sealing properly, so on and so forth. And if there's anything there that he thinks needs attention, we'll go ahead and replace. Cam is out. I'm leaving it here on this flat surface. You're supposed to store a cam on the flat surface, not upright, because it could warp over time. It's a heavy, long, hollow tube of metal, so you're supposed to just leave it on a flat surface somewhere. So now at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and clean off the block. Next step is just to take this head to the machine shop to get it back, and then everything is the opposite of what we just did. And hopefully we'll have it back on the road not too far from now.